I think set the table for the heart of the rest of our day to really begin to look and talk about what makes this stuff work. Just to give you a little background, I don't know how many of you guys are familiar. About 6 months ago, 8 months ago, in a conversation in the family schools, Maggie, who you met, and myself, we were sitting around. We have 13 schools in the family schools. And Frank will talk about that later. But 5 of them were co-located, and we were like looking at the dynamic of what was going on in those schools. Some were working out well, some not so well. But what we knew is that co-location was something that was here to stay. It was supposed to be, and I think, I'm trying to think who made that point this morning, but it said it's really about the children. And so what our job as a family schools was like, how can we help our schools do better in serving students? And so that's what we said, let's start the conversation. We spoke with our assistant dean, we spoke with our dean. They were on board, and then we were able to lasso in Dr. Franca D'Olio, and then everything just kind of rolled from that, and here we are today with our co-location conference. But right now, I want to be quiet. I want to turn it over to Mr. Jernigan, Mr. Zimmer, and we'll have a conversation today about Prop 39. Please, this is very interactive. It's not didactic. We want to hear your questions. I'm sure they want to answer some of your questions, and so please, as you have questions, let's go, and then I'll have some things. I'll serve as the moderator, but for the most part, like I said, I'll try to stay out. Thank you very much. Steve, Sean.
Hey, John. Thanks. Most of you know me. My name's Sean. I manage Prop 39. And well, I'd like to start by explaining my role. And my role is to be a technical backstop to help to bring transparency to the district's effort here to provide a large-scale public good, right? And to try to move us as a district from a compliance mode to a mission-focused mode, the mission being a quality seat for every child. A lot of what I talk about is usually the box. What's the box? What is Prop 39? What isn't Prop 39? And then at best, I try to operationalize the vision of other folks. Like we heard today, the administrators talking about what works, what could work better, what doesn't work, what they wish for, and then part of my role is to hear that and think, well, if I do take these 5 steps, maybe I can get to what works for everybody. And so I'm always looking at how do I learn from a specific case and then take that to everyone so that we have a fair, open system where folks who haven't even thought about getting into the marketplace won't be turned away because of the obstacle of being a facility. So I had intended to start by talking to you about the box. Here's the box, but I thought, well, that's not what today's about. Today's not about further examination of the box. It's about looking forward, what are promising practices. But I think we probably need to start somewhere. So this is the box. The box for Prop 39 is, it's actually, we have a new Prop 39, which is clean energy. The Prop 39 that I live in is actually Education Code 47614, and the implementing regulations issued by the State Board of Education that further explain that fairly short section of the Ed Code. And what it means is all campuses must be shared fairly with all public school students. Pretty basic idea, but it is a paradigm shift. It's a massive paradigm shift. If you got into public education, and this is your calling, the building and your program are one and the same. And the idea that now another program could come into that building presents a major challenge for folks. In terms of the district's implementation of the Ed Code, also the guidance is clear. We must give equal consideration to all public school students. And that doesn't mean that we're able to look at our planning and say, well, this student's in the district program, so we're going to advantage that planning or put those interests above the other. It has to be equal consideration. Also a massive paradigm shift for the district. The district's role is to be a steward, right? But the district also has a role in operating a school at that campus. So it's very hard for the district to give equal consideration. There are, I think many questions all of you have, and I'd like to move into that area. So I just want to keep it very kind of 30,000 feet. Another concept I think to hold in mind is a concept of reasonable equivalence, which really means the student should enjoy an environment, a facility that is reasonably equivalent to what they would otherwise enjoy if they'd gone to a district program. That's the idea. And what we find that sometimes reasonably equivalent doesn't go together with quality seat, right? There are things that need to be mediated, improved at campuses for all students. And so in moving from compliance to mission focus, malicious compliance could be, well, you're in the same difficult circumstances that the student would be in otherwise. That would be more of a compliance focus. But a mission focus, quality seat for every child, means we have to step back and say, well, let's think about that wish list again. What if we looked at Measure Q money and master planned it, the $500 million of charter school construction bond money, right, to the benefit of all students? And yes, Prop 39 or co-locations would definitely be one component of that, right? There should probably be a lot of other programs to spur innovation. So that's the box. I just kind of wanted to put it out there.
Thanks, Sean. And I want to actually thank, I think a lot of people don't realize the role Sean plays and that's winning gold, and how difficult and how much he actually struggles to make the box work. So I just want to say thank you. It's an honor to work with you. And let's just do. I apologize if you all did this already. Let's try something. I promise that I'm not going to change anything that I'm going to say based on this. But I would love to just go around real quick so we all know each other in the room.
I'm Franca Del Olio. I'm from Loyola Marymount University School of Education in the Department of Educational Leadership, and I'm one of the collaborators on this event.
Marco Petruzzi, CEO of Green Dot Public Schools.
I'm Jose De Paz with Community Relations Facilities at LMU.
I'm Maureen Kendall. I'm an alum of LMU and director of the test program, and happy to be here.
I'm Robert Kogler, I'm assistant principal at New Millennium Secondary School.
I'm Chris Perez, a principal at Raymond Avenue Elementary School.
Hi, I'm Jackie Rumson. I'm policy director for board members Zimmer.
Thank you, Jackie.
Hi, I'm Sky Parr. I'm a graduate student here at LMU.
Hi, I'm Sarah Angel. I'm the managing regional director for advocacy for CCSA.
Hi, I'm Lilia Geiger. I'm with LAUSD Charter Schools Division. I'm with Sean's team.
Good morning. I'm Juan Flitch, Administrator of Operations, ESC North.
Good morning, Julie Gonzalez, Instructional Director, ESC East.
Liza Bercovici, Founder and Executive Director of Gabriella Charter School, which is co-located with Logan Street Elementary School.
Titus Campos, Operations Coordinator with ESC East.
Enrique Soberanes, Principal at Lorena Elementary School.
I'm Philippa Altman. I'm with CCSA's legal team.
I'm Kevin McCoy, the Principal at Irwin Elementary in Van Nuys.
I'm William Otto. I'm the Principal at Ann Street Elementary. I'm co-located with Michelle Jasso at Endeavor.
Anthony Aguilar, Instructional Director, ESC South.
Danny Tillman, CCSA Communications Team.
Bahia Jakin, Ara Charter School, here with my co-location, Irwin Elementary.
Did we get everybody? Okay. All right. And true, stick true to my statement. I'm not going to change anything I was going to say. Welcome. Thank you for being here, being part of this conversation. A couple of updates. The dog from this morning survived. Really miraculously, 14 lanes of the 405, and looks like he's going to be okay. And what I forgot to say, because I was actually a little shaken up this morning, is the whole reason that I got to spend all this time with my nephew is because Dr. Daisy and I flew to Washington, D.C. and got the chance to be with the president as he unveiled the My Brother's Keeper initiative last Monday, a week ago today, and got to be in the room as he had, as the entire world was kind of losing it. The president spent an hour and a half talking to 25 African American, Latino, and Native American young men in a small conversation at Walker Jones Primary Center in Northeast Los Angeles, Northeast DC, and it was incredibly powerful to be part of that conversation and to really the unprecedented. I think sometimes in the midst of everything we forget that we actually have a chance with initiatives like My Brother's Keeper and the Brother Son Selves work that we're doing here in Los Angeles. And one of the reasons that we have a chance that we've never had before is we have a president who for the first time in history has shared experience with these young men. And to be in an intimate setting and hear the president dialogue back and forth and share so much of his own very troubled adolescence and youth really was incredibly hopeful and inspiring. So I meant to say that this morning. And I actually want to take some time, Sean will forgive me, I'm sure you have a lot of questions for Sean, maybe challenges for me. But I want to actually expand on some of the things that I touched on this morning. And a lot of these ideas come out of the brain gnashing sessions that Sean, myself, others on the team, charter partners have tried to have to figure out really, really difficult questions of honoring the rights of all public school students, underline all public school students, to have access to viable classroom space, to honor their parents and their own decisions about the public school of their choice, with the rights, the obligations that we have to LAUSD students who are co-located on that same campus. And I hope we could all agree that as we continue to expand the number of seats that we have authorized, that inventory will become more and more of an issue. And we have to be creative about this. And I think that our creativity has to extend way beyond what is set aside and what's not set aside. That we have to be able to look at, that all of the leaders, really, in Los Angeles County have to be able to look at available space and what could that look like, thinking outside of the box. And I think that there is a possibility, again, if we kind of do things differently, to of course look at and continue to look at what is truly available space within LAUSD. And when we, within the confines of the law, create a co-location, that we are looking at the seats that are authorized for expansion and what that will mean on a particular campus and what the trajectories are. That it's not just a decision that's made in a silo. But I think it also means a different type of look at available classroom space and building space at neighboring and adjacent districts to LAUSD. That is just becoming part of our reality as we look at the number of seats that we have authorized. Available classroom space at private and parochial schools. Available classroom space at community colleges, colleges, and universities. We're in the classroom, not specifically putting LMU on the line. I'm just saying that we're in a classroom. And if we regionally make a commitment to the most dynamic choice in the nation, which I actually believe that we have. I believe that in LAUSD, despite our struggles, we have the most dynamic system of choice anywhere in the country. And we should all actually be proud of that. The district, our charter partners, our university partners, and there's no doubt in my mind, having visited places across the country, that we have the highest quality charter schools anywhere in the nation. There's no doubt in my mind. And so, as we struggle through these issues, I look towards that creativity. And just a simple recognition of the reality that there is not a one-for-one causal relationship between a parent's choice of a charter school and declining enrollment in LAUSD. It's not precisely causal, and we see that all the time. I mean, I get that it should be that way, but families are making choices to enroll in charter schools that previously enrolled in parochial schools. They're making choices to enroll in charter schools that previously enrolled in other districts. Yes, there is a relationship between charter school expansion and declining enrollment in LAUSD. But we have to let go of the myth that it's precisely causal or exact in the number of spaces, desks, and classrooms, because our experience has taught us that it's not. And as we continue to grow seats, and as we are able to look at in the wake of Prop 30 and hopefully other investments that are coming down the line for our public schools, as we begin to look at lowering class size significantly, that shouldn't have to be a tug of war. We have to look at inventory differently. Second thing that I talked about, the preference for non-competitive co-locations in LAUSD. When it works in grade-alike situations, that's tremendous. And we should highlight those examples and we should elevate them. It can work, it has worked, but the majority of the successful co-locations are in non-competitive settings. And we have to look at a district, we have to look as a district in making a very specific facilities investment in that type of strategic planning. If we know that on the whole, non-competitive works better, and we have a better chance of building a really successful co-location relationship, that means a facility investment. And that takes an act of the board and leadership of the superintendent together, and our charter partners working with us to make that investment together. We've had the best success that we've had is not something that's publicized a lot, but working with our charter partners, like we worked with Camino on I'll get the letter wrong, Prop D or whatever it was, grant, and we were able to do a land grant, or I can't remember all the terms, but we've used creative mechanisms before, and we can use creative mechanisms again. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about demographic congruity. It's a pretty it's a pretty specific issue that is not the case in the majority of the campuses. It's very, very important in a small number of cases, usually not an issue at LAUSD. I do want to talk about incentives for host schools. And this may sound kind of cold, but I think we have to do it. I think we have to concretely make the co-location experience more attractive on the front side. We have examples of principals, of teachers who have had very, very good experiences after a year, 2 years, 3 years. But almost always, if we're really being honest, there's a lot of apprehension, sometimes anger, sometimes fear, and sometimes resentment as this starts. And we just have to acknowledge that, not say that it's right or it's wrong, but just acknowledge it, that this is part of that experience, and do something about it. And we can do things about it. We can build incentives into the co-location experience for the host schools. We can absolutely make priority for needed facilities improvements and deferred maintenance projects. It is really tough on a principal and school staff when they have deferred maintenance that's been waiting for 4 or 5 years, and M&O comes in to make adjustments for a charter co-location and doesn't touch the deferred maintenance. That doesn't feel good. That just doesn't feel good. It's not about charter versus, host school. It just doesn't feel good that the deferred maintenance that you've been waiting and waiting and waiting for, you wait longer for, and the investment's made immediately so charter can move into available space. Especially if you believe that one of the reasons that enrollment is declining is the condition of your building. That's reality. And we can do something about that, and we should. Also preference for new facilities investments, including fields, technology, clinics. We've approved a lot of facilities priorities, and there's no reason why there shouldn't be preference for co-located sites. That just makes it on the front end a more, just feeling like it's not something that's happening to you, but it's something that you can be a part of, and that there can be immediate, early benefits. I'm very interested in incentives for classroom teachers. I'm very interested in, offering at our district store or on P cards a certain amount of money per classroom to make classroom improvements. It doesn't feel good. I just have to tell you, it doesn't feel good for classroom teachers when they've kind of been struggling through the worst 5 years of public funding, and a co-location moves in, and they've got a lot of bright and shiny new things. It doesn't feel good. And we can do something about that, and we should. The last thing I want to suggest here is that figuring out a way that we can do a shared budget that we invest for collaborative activities. Not just say, hey, you should do things together, like we've heard about on stage this morning, but actually invest in it. Actually say, not only you should, but we are actually going to give, in LAUSD, should is a word that's thrown around all the time. Things happen when you actually give folks a budget to do it. And there's no reason why the types of programs that we're talking about today, and many other programs that happen on some sites, but certainly not all, can't be part of this picture. And a $5,000 budget, just as an example, to do collaborative activities that involve the families of both the host school and the charter school, that you don't have to budget more for or take away from something else, is something that people would actually be part of. And it would kind of accelerate the collaboration that we all say we hope will happen at a co-location. Nothing makes the things that we hope happen actually happen more than a budget. And the last thing again that I talked about was leadership. And I'll just say a couple of things about it. How many people have heard of dancing classrooms? How many people have? A couple of people. This is a great program. It's been at some charter schools. It's been at many LAUSD campuses. There's a couple of different versions of it. But basically, it's, if you saw Red Hot Ballroom, was a documentary made about 8 or 9 years ago with students from New York City. And I have this program in several of my schools. Basically, they teach ballroom dancing to elementary kids. And kids at 7, 8, 9, 10 years old have this amazing experience of learning ballroom dancing. And it's very, when you see the large performances, it's very, very moving. The founder of the program 3 years ago went back to his birthplace that happens to be in Haifa in Israel and made a documentary doing the program in Haifa with Jewish students and Palestinian students. It's called Dancing in Haifa. It's a tremendous documentary that should be required viewing, I think, for I'm not going to say for all co-located sites, but it should be required viewing for anyone who's working on these types of issues. This so often is a leadership question. And we do a lot of solutions-based leading, but there hasn't been a lot of actually positive result-based leading on this. And I just feel like somebody asked me, as I came in, well, why have you, trying to change your mind on these things? I don't think I've changed my mind. I just, after 5 years of just being in this day by day, I just, what works and what doesn't work. And I don't see how fighting in court has helped any kid. I just haven't. And I'll say that here, I'll say that, in, at a board meeting, as a person who has, been a major force in keeping this legal fight going. I don't see how it's helped kids. And I am very interested in moving forward on how we get creative, we get solution-based, we get result-based in our approach. And I've seen this work and I've seen it fail. And the tipping point is always leadership, and on every one of those levels. And so we've gathered here today. The ideas I've presented aren't the end of the list. They're just ideas that I've kind of accumulated over the past 2 or 3 years and trying to think differently about this. And I offer them as a starting point. I say that with Sean, although your interaction may be different, both with me, with him, with the division, this is somebody who has really, really fought internally for solutions. And so I'll end it there. We're here. We're sitting at the desk. We're ready for questions. Marco.
Yeah, so first of all, I thank you for what you all said. And to be honest, I frankly agree with everything you've said. I'd like to, however, just nudge by a couple of degrees the framing of the issue, because I think, and you've heard me say this before, but I think it's important based on what Sean said and also what you followed, that let me try to give the charter perspective on this, right? Prop 39, you use the words, it's something that we have to do to serve all children. Prop 39 was originated to lower, the original intent of Prop 39 was to lower the bond from 66% to 55% so that districts could build more schools. And if it wasn't for Prop 39, the 120 schools that the school district built were not going to be passed, right? That bond would have never passed 60%. I believe Superintendent Romer fought hard for Prop 39 because he knew there was no way that it wouldn't pass. It's important to point that out because everybody pays for those bonds, right? All traditional school children and charter school children's parents, right? The parents pay for those bonds. So we're all part of the bond paying public that has allowed these schools to exist and be maintained, etc. So from our point of view, sometimes when it's framed that way, it seems like we have to do it, but it's important to point out that we are all taxpayers who are paying for these schools. And when children have to seek alternate solutions, which I think is fine. We have a lot of schools co-located, and frankly, generally speaking, I think they're in the column of good co-locations. I would like to think we are good co-locators, but we've also had to build a lot of schools ourselves to get out of the district. I think it's important to acknowledge that those children and those families are being double taxed, right? They are paying for the bonds for classrooms, just like everybody else. And on top of that, most of them pay 20% or 25% sometimes out of their funding to be in a private location because they didn't get a co-location. So I think I just want to give a little bit of perspective from the charters why we fight so hard for Prop 39. It's not because it's I feel our parents, and for people like us who serve 95% free and reduced lunch, frankly 99% minority students, when you are actually taking 20-25% out of the revenues of the school for a private facility, it's money that should go to those kids. So I think sometimes the framing of we have to do this, for them sometimes misses the point about the fact that all of our parents are paying for those bonds. They're paying for equal access to classrooms. It should be completely equal. And yet sometimes we have to seek different solutions. I get it, right? We've got to be pragmatic about this. But there should be a thanking for those schools that go out and build their own facilities. They should be thanked, right? Because those children are paying double, right? They're paying double for those facilities privately, and they're releasing the pressure, and there should be some thankfulness for it. And it's actually putting a lot of financial pressure on those schools. When I read that some schools are now under potentially being closed because of financial issues, we got to recall that a lot of these schools have to pay for 25% extra facility while those parents are also paying for those bonds. So I just wanted to, I agree with all frankly, the solutions are in the direction that you guys are pointing out. So I'm not trying to make a controversial point, but I do think it's a slight framing point that it's important that permeates the LAUSD mentality that these children and their parents are paying for our schools already, right, through the bond paying. So I think it's important.
And Marco, you make the right point, which is that, and what I mean to say is, all of these students are legally entitled to share these facilities fairly, consistent with the public trust and expectation. And I think that's the point you're making. And that is really the framework I operate from, if I wasn't clear enough. And I understand that the district climbed a learning curve in terms of how we're doing that. But it is, the law is clear, and what you said is accurate. The way facilities are funded, that is true.
So my response to that would be agreed. A lot of things have happened since Prop 39 passed, a lot. And I don't think that people, maybe people did foresee the level of expansion in LA, which is pretty much an LA issue. I mean, it's a statewide, bond, but the pressure is mostly in Los Angeles. And I would say, so heard and acknowledged on the framing point, but I think that the point moving forward that I think is most important is how can we work together to make facilities investments that take the pressure, the Prop 39, that alleviate some of the Prop 39 pressure, especially as we look to a future that might include class size reduction for LAUSD, meaningful class size reduction for LAUSD. How do we make private facilities investment less of a burden on the charter school? And that, I don't see why we couldn't work together on that. Because it is, there are, that's why I say leadership, right? Is because there's state ed codes, that could work better for everyone. There are a lot of public-private partnership issues that could work a lot better for everyone. We had a building program that involved a lot of use of land that 25 years ago, no one would have said was possible. No one would have said it was possible that we could have built the way we did in LAU, in the district. Two things came out of that. One is we can do things that people 25 years ago didn't were possible for a district to do. And the second was expertise that we should now share with our charter partners to make it so it is not such a burden. Because there's the financial burden that you talk about, that I acknowledge, that should be not only acknowledged but rewarded, and we should work together to lessen. But there's also the stress, and that innovators and educators and folks that have a dream for pushing public education forward with new models, new ways to do things, shouldn't be required to be facilities experts. And when we have a now 15 to 18 year treasury chest of expertise, and Lord knows every mistake that probably could have been made has been made, and we've learned from them, and we've built damn good schools. We should act to lessen that burden, and I think that there are ways we can do that.
So I really like what I'm hearing about the idea of making it a win-win for co-locations, because I think the perception for most schools right now, and I'm a charter, is that there's nothing to be gained from a charter coming in. The space that they've traditionally seen as theirs is all of a sudden having to be shared. In my prior life, I was a divorce lawyer, and I always liken it to what it was like when the husband moved in with his kids and the wife with her kids. All of a sudden, you had to share the refrigerator and share the TV set and share the bedrooms, and it's tough. And we recognize that. One of the things that I've always wondered is, and I'd love to get your thoughts about this, Steve and Sean, is what about if we were allowed to negotiate directly with the host school, and if some of the MOU that MNO that we pay could be directly paid to the host school, because I think that infusion of cash would be something that they would appreciate. And I think some of the inventory that we sometimes wonder about, whether it might not be available for shared use or even exclusive use, might be more likely to become available. What are your thoughts?
To the precise question of negotiation, we're probably a couple to a few years away from that. I don't think that, again, I don't think that imagining into the future is something we should limit ourselves on. I think that in the successful co-locations, things like that happen. But the key threshold that I think that we have to get over is that right now we are in a framing, to use Marco's words, and to kind of paraphrase what you were saying, as a burden. And we have to act concretely and intentionally and strategically to at least balance burden and benefit. And I think that when we get to host schools really feeling like there is the extrinsic benefit in M&O, in money for classrooms and things like that, money for collaborative programs, it becomes a lot easier to get to the intrinsic benefit of sharing best practices, learning about new models and innovations from each other. And in non-competitive sites, frankly, sharing families and collaborating to meet the needs of the family, and sometimes meeting the needs of children who have very diverse learning styles in the same family. So I think that you get to a place like you're talking about where there can be some really direct kind of MOU arrangements once we intentionally and strategically raise the extrinsic benefits that co-location causes. So I can't speak for the lawyers. I can't kind of promise something that I think is actually still a little bit down the line. But, you know, I'd love to get to the point where it's educators in the room figuring out the best use of space as opposed to lawyers. Yeah, question. Yeah.
I think I'm pretty much going to say what you just said, but I think administrators and parents, we want all kids to have a quality education. We want all of our kids to have equal access. That's what we want. Charter school, I don't mind a charter school coming into the campus, but I think when teachers and parents see, just like you mentioned, Mr. Zuru, charter schools receiving brand new chairs and desks, when they see, ITD coming in and running those cables and those phone lines and the internet in a matter of a week or two, where I called it in, 2-3 months ago, and people are seeing this. Not only are administrators seeing this, but teachers and parents. That's where all the negativity begins. And I think that if you were to bring in a charter school into our campus, and you give the charter schools, brand new furniture, then give the kids who are coming to the school brand new furniture as well. And I think you would avoid a lot of this negativity if that was balanced out. If that was balanced out and you hit it right on the dot, I think that in the other room and here as well, that I think there has to be some benefits. But I've been the principal of my school for 3 years, and I've had a charter school there for 3 years. But for 3 years, I've also been hearing about the different benefits, and then also, the M&O. M&O has always been a big issue for our school campuses, and being told we're working on it, and we're still getting the same amount of money our allocation that we received the previous years. And the teachers know about this, right? Because they look at the budget. They're part of the budget development. They see the numbers, and they don't see a different amount year to year and year to year. So that's why they continue with this perception of charter schools. So I think that we need that package that you're talking about. And I think you'll avoid all this because we all want the same for all of our kids.
I just wanted to say, I appreciate what everyone is saying. I'd hope that we stay away from comments about, taxpayers and all that. I don't think that's the platform for this. To talk about rights and how, you know, people pay taxes and as a consequence, you know, they have rights at charter schools. I personally have nothing against charter schools. I don't. I believe in providing, as a parent, I believe in having a choice, you know, whether to enroll my daughter in school A or school B. I believe in competition, especially in the global economy. We got to be competitive. We got to, you know, it's a cruel world out there. We have to prepare our children. But I do share some of the sentiments and something I've been bringing up to Mr. Jernigan for the last 2 years. And I think you're, Mr. Zimmerman, you're aware of my school. They've spoken before the board. And as a matter of fact, my school meets on a monthly, well, I meet with the charter school principal twice a month. But we meet as a committee now every month because of your directive, you know, to the local district staff. And, you know, if a charter school is going to be coming on to a existing LAUSD campus, I think that transition needs to be done with a serious level of sensitivity. In my school, it wasn't. It was 5 days before the end of the school year. I get a phone call. Actually, it was from Mr. Jernigan, letting me know that there was going to be a charter there. So, I mean, when you know, the community as a result felt highly disrespected. You know, they saw it as an imposition, and that fed the negativity. That's right. That fed the negativity. I don't have any issues with the charter school. I don't. But the way it was placed there with minimal preparation for the community input is one thing. Another thing that, your name, sir?
Chris.
Chris mentioned, and it's something I've been mentioning to Mrs. Jernigan. The charter school pays, you know, their M&O fee. What is so difficult about getting that money back to the school? Sure. I mean, by January of this past year, this is my second year going into third year, I had $40. I had $40 for maintenance and operations. You know, struggling where I'm going to get, you know, toilet paper, paper towels. You know, so I just don't see that being, you know, rocket science. You know.
So let me respond. I appreciate it, and you know, I said it at the board at the time, and I say it to you here again publicly. The situation that happened to you and the Lorena community. And has happened a few times, thankfully only a few times across the district when there has been these issues. Should never have happened. I need to say to Sean, about Sean, the reason why I'm bringing these issues up here publicly, because I figure LMU has had the courage to kind of bring people together. You know, I should have the courage to kind of push the envelope a little bit and talk about things openly that I've not talked about, that I've talked about privately. That Sean has had a very limited number of tools in his tool chest. And my goal is to expand those tools, period. I don't know how to say it any differently. I think that when Sean mentioned this, that the, and what I wanted to say in regards to one of the things that Marco said is, you know, a lot of things have happened that no one could have predicted since the passage of Prop 39. And the financial crisis that faced the district until the passage of Prop 30. Prop 30, just I say this everywhere I go, so I'll say it here too. Prop 30 baseline stabilized us. No more. No more. It is not this. It is not like, you know, and now money will flow like a mighty stream. That is not what happened. Like, it just stabilized us from free fall. There's nobody else in this room who knows how close this district was to collapse financially. And I think that now that we are getting to stabilization, we need to be able to say to you, and everybody should support this. This shouldn't be like a, you know, even people who believe the most stridently in the letter of the law of Prop 39. Everyone would say a school should have ample notice to prepare and to be able to, you know, be strategic and intentional about the opening of co-location. There was real damage, not because of the legal act of co-locating, but because of the way it happened.
Absolutely.
And that we as the district need to acknowledge that. I believe that with financial stabilization, we actually have more tools to do that. And my ideas about about what types of benefits can be offered to a school are a starting place. But they shouldn't be viewed as a consolation prize. And I want to talk about something for a moment because you brought it up and you shared with the board the experience that you had. You're sharing it with folks in here. The other thing that we need to get away from in framing is the sometimes spoken, often unspoken idea or suggestion that a co-location is somehow punishment for declining enrollment. That's not Sean, not myself, not directly, but that is part of this picture, folks. And it's subtle, and it's sometimes not direct, sometimes it's pretty overt. Sometimes I've had principals call me crying, being told, you know, well, if you had done a better job attracting the kids to your school, this wouldn't be happening to you. I mean, just think about those words. If you had done a better job, this wouldn't be happening to you. If that's the way folks are treated, again, not by Sean, but the reasons that the district has been in crisis are dynamic. The reasons that charters have grown exponentially in Los Angeles are dynamic. They don't boil down to, if you had just done a better job, you wouldn't be losing enrollment. And that's the message that principals get sometimes. That somehow available classroom space is your fault. I'm not saying that was the message that was given to you individually.
I understand.
But we've got to be able to, and this gets to the leadership question I was talking about, that every level say, if this is really about kids, and this is really about making Los Angeles kind of a example for the nation about how choice can actually work for all kids, then we have to cleanse ourselves of the rhetoric and the suggestion that declining enrollment is somehow the failure of the professional educators that are in campuses that are in flux. And that's the other part of making sure that this balance happens. It's certainly investments. That's the material part. But the spiritual part, if you will, is ridding ourselves of the notion that somehow all district schools are failures, and saying that there are very simple reasons for those failures. There are not. The national conversation is changing around this, and should absolutely change here in Los Angeles too. And acknowledge that enrollment fluctuation in the community is a dynamic issue, and that we just have to stop even the suggestion that somehow, you know, you have the space so you deserve this. First of all, this doesn't have to be a bad thing. It can be actually a very good thing. And we have to make the changes as leaders to concretely do that. And let's change the declining enrollment narrative. If choice is such a positive thing, I actually believe that it is, then we should be celebrating. We should be celebrating all over. And enrollment balancing in a district that was massively oversized and massively overcrowded is a normative cycle. We had kids in year-round schools that were declared illegal by the courts for 40 years. And somehow, just like with a lot of things in Los Angeles, our collective memory of that has evaporated. That contributed to the instructional crisis greatly. When you go to school 20 days less a year for your entire, which is almost 2 years less, if you're K through 12 in a year-round school, that contributes to an instructional crisis. So anyway, I could go on and on, but what I'm saying is that we have to materially change the framing, but we have to change the narrative framing as well. And your example, though rare, should spur us in that direction.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You know, Steve, it's painful to hear the stories of the day-to-day experiences that of the people here. But I would like to suggest that as you expand Sean's toolbox, that you take a look at facilities, Department of Facilities, procurement, and finances. That part of the house, the business side of the house, does not get a lot of attention from the board because, rightly so, you're extremely interested in education and the children in the classroom and the parents and all those dynamics. But back in the day when we were raising the money and getting ready for the building of the 131 schools, etc., and we did get the support of the charter school community and made them a lot of promises, and it was extremely important to have that constituency involved, that we were able to pass bond measure on bond measure. We had a much sharper facilities division and procurement division. So somehow or other, they may be really sharp, but it's not obvious. So taking a look at it would be extremely helpful. They need to hear that it's a sensitive process. They need to be much sharper on all of this. They need to be more efficient. They need to cost less in what they do. The overhead that is charged there, I've heard ridiculous stories on that. So just as you're sharpening and expanding his toolkit, I think that would help Sean a lot.
I agree with that. I agree with that we have to look at all parts of the house. I think that we are in a very challenging moment in facilities because we were so mission driven it was the right mission, to get every child off of the year-round calendars. I mean, we were so mission driven, and we were the largest public works program in the nation. I would argue the most important civil rights project in the nation. And we were mission driven, and it was, when you talk to people from facilities from that time, I mean, they almost choke up talking about how, and you were there, and you know what it took to get the former district to that, that sharpness. We're in a really challenging moment of a different facilities role that doesn't have the same obvious mission-driven kind of potency. But again, leadership, I point to myself first, has to find a way to sculpt that mission again and to get folks as charged about the challenges we're talking about in here as they were about building the schools.
But the time, if I may, the time is right because there are billions of dollars going to be spent on refurbishment.
Yes.
And that is really key to the discussion here.
Yes.
And
So
if it gets board attention out in public, it will happen.
I agree with you.
Sorry, Kim.
No. I agree. I agree with that, and that is I think that amongst the different things that I mean, I think board members should have like LAUSD 101. I think I'm like finally understanding procurement after 5 years. I should admit that out loud on camera. But yes. I mean, but I think also our both our charter and university partners need to have like this kind of 101 of like how the district operates and like what a large public, what are the contracts that govern it, what are the ed codes that govern it, what are the things that seem so counter-logical that are sometimes within our control, sometimes not. That awareness is important. But I think what Maureen says in terms of the attention given to facilities, and I will say very clearly there is a political issue or a board issue, and that is 3% M&O restoration. When the crisis hit, one of the things that was done at the legislature was to relieve districts of the burden of having 3% of their operation budget, 3% mandated for M&O. And in a district like LAUSD with a $7.8 billion operating budget, that is a significant budget. The cuts that have been referenced in M&O were profound, and I'm actually agnostic on the internal issues of how much of the restoration of that should be internal M&O and how much of it should be contracted. That's actually, there are so many things that are my issue, that's not my issue. But we have to get back to that 3%. And just like we talk about accountability in a different way, as we politically build the votes and the momentum to have that restoration in M&O, we have to have the same kind of accountability that we're finally building into the instructional side of the district and the M&O side as well. So thank you for that, Maureen. I think there was a question here.
No, I was motioning to
We have about 10 more minutes, and we want to make sure that if any questions are on the floor, that we have them addressed. In addition to the fact that I think we've heard a few different things, and I kind of want to summarize, if you will, some of those things that you guys can kind of give your closing. One was where we started that conversation about making sure that the conversation is framed correctly, and that we understand that sometimes from wherever we land on this, sometimes it seems as if there's a double taxation, if you will, for parents and families that when a charter school location has a finance entity. The second one that I think that is really important is how do we have these M&O conversations, such that maybe the funding can be more streamlined. It can be school to school, principal to principal. And I think that's really critical. Just throwing this out there, one of the concerns that we've always heard is as we see the whole school, and Steve, you spoke about the incentives for the whole school, as we see the whole school with several layers of responsibilities as it relates to how they need to manage that space. And Sean, I know you're very familiar with where we're going with this. But at the same time, not necessarily that being communicated to the charter school that's on that campus. And so there's responsibilities that the whole school has, but there's no real dialogue there. And so and the charter school may be coming from a space where they have a lot more autonomy. And so it just becomes kind of you're responsible as a site as a host to do certain things, and the charter school may have that mindset of you're not the boss of me, and so you just got to go back and forth. I think that's a dialogue that needs to happen. I think the other thing is the fairness in terms of how that money kind of looks on both sides when facilities comes in with different things, and how do we do this? A lot of things on the table, and then the final one I think that Dr. Kimball spoke of is that issue of fiscal responsibility and getting our fiscal house in order from the LAUSD side. A lot of pieces.
And declining enrollment.
And it not being the fault of the host principal that you have Prop 39 because you can't keep your school full. You know, what I'd like to ask is this, and I see a few more hands, so we want to make sure we get those questions taken care of. But as you two close out, can we begin to look at, because part of this day is solutions, and I think we've talked about a lot of issues, but maybe if you could speak more specifically to next step type solutions. I mean, Steve, you gave us some good big those 5 points, they're large. But what are maybe some next steps that we can kind of look at as we move from this day, ways to kind of build on this day? Because this is the beginning of the conversation, but we know it's nowhere near the end.
Well, if some of these ideas become actual initiatives or resolutions, having the charter community support those, those resolutions, and having host schools and co-located schools together supporting a resolution that I might sponsor. After people get off the floor after passing out when that happens, that can be a very powerful, maybe a very, very powerful thing. I mean, offering some of these concrete things takes 4 votes.
Steve?
There's a couple people who have some.
I just wanted to say, on the M&O piece, the hours of operation for charters are often different than LAUSD schools. And there needs to be some sensitivity as to how our custodial staff operates within that, as well as who has the kinds of keys to open the building and the use of the alarm, and who gets called when a charter person is there. Gets to turn off the alarm. You know, those kinds of issues really do impact us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very, very much.
And those are things we can take action on tomorrow, immediately.
Yeah.
Those are operational details that we should be able to address.
Most of the time I've been able to handle that directly with the staff, but it doesn't always get communicated as well as it could to my bosses.
Yeah. I mean, and that is it's a really, the day-to-day things impact the broader picture.
Yeah, the sensitivity, for instance, to the custodial schedule for vacations.
Sure. You
know, you get one message from our upper staff, and then what really happens on the campus.
Rather than that.
Our co-location is 5 years old, so things may have moved on, but is there some kind of mandatory co-location training now for charters and for schools? Somewhat analogous to what we're doing now. There is, okay.
There is.
Is it productive?
Is it productive? I try to make it productive.
Depends on who's there.
A lot of it centers around the communications as well as reference, getting everyone on the same page, which is very important because then folks don't waste time going down rabbit holes that are really fruitless.
You know, just speaking to what you mentioned earlier, Mr. Simmer, you know, you spoke about incentives, and I'm looking more in terms of support. Because even though enrollment is decreasing as a consequence, the charter school may be adding, enrollment, I'm still fully responsible for everybody. in terms of responsibility, in terms of operations, in terms of safety, in terms of maintenance. So my workload is still just as high or even higher, greater than it was before, but the support keeps diminishing.
I understand. I think that another idea that's really an LAUSD specific idea, so I didn't talk about it today, is actually having a director within ISIC and then the five areas that we have is specifically assigned to support principals with co-location issues. And I think that, again, that's an investment, right? But that is a way that we can, a lot of things, this may not be your issue, a lot of things that principals talk to me a lot about is, it's not just that they're struggling to get support from the people who are supposed to support them on issues around the co-location. They're stuck in their office on the phone an hour and a half just figuring out who to ask for certain things. And that, it's an internal issue, but it's something that I've thought of as well, and let's keep in communication about how I can make that happen.
Thank you.
And this is going to be, Mark, you're going to be our last question.
Okay, I was going in the direction of the suggestions route, so I have a couple of things. Number one, I think it would be very helpful. I've been trying this 3 years, but I don't know if there's a law against it or something, but somehow I would love for LAUSD to recognize charters in not only their enrollment, but in their scores. Your authorizers, ultimately, you should take credit for our success as well, and our failures, to be honest, right? So I think it's important for us to keep talking about our enrollment has actually probably not gone down overall as a district much, maybe I think probably 50,000 or something like that, but it's not all due to. So I think if we can measure enrollment and scores and everything as a unique LAUSD thing, it would just change the rhetoric a little bit. That's one suggestion. The second thing that I wanted to talk about is we know that it takes a lot of leadership to make, as we keep pointing out, to make this next. What I've learned in life is it takes a lot of leadership to create positive change. It takes really very little effort and a couple of individuals to ruin it for everybody, right? Playing the opposition game is very easy. Doesn't take a lot of skills, and to ruin something is really easy. Look at what the Tea Party's doing in Washington, right? I mean, 15 people can stop a nation, right? So we know, without naming names, that there's a handful of folks that create a lot of the angst around all of this. I mean, they get actively involved in throwing, in creating the angst across schools. And I think what's important is that we somehow defang them in some shape or form. One of the things that I was talking to Sean about was we don't have clear criteria around the extracurricular classrooms, the parent centers, et cetera, et cetera. It's not so much that, as Sean answered over there, it doesn't matter because those things don't count, quote unquote, when you are doing it. But I think it's actually an important visual. It matters in the sense that it creates the rhetoric of they're taking away things or stuff like that. If we had some criteria, I think I would be very willing to respect parent centers and enrichment centers if I knew it was a fair allocation. I'm saying, yeah, I'm not going to take away 5 classrooms that are actually using it. But I've been in schools, Sean knows what I'm talking about, where I've been pointed out to classrooms that like, oh, this is a 6th grade planning room for teachers in 6th grade. And you kind of look at that and you go, wait a second. If the teachers are here planning, aren't their classrooms empty? Like it was clearly a ploy to kind of, so I think if we had some criteria and it'd be more transparent, it would actually help the conversation in the sense that we don't certainly want to take away computer centers. I don't want to take away parent centers that are really being used. I would feel like a jerk if I did, right? So we don't want to do that. But when I see schools with 20 empty classrooms, all of them named as something, that's an important.
So let me say, again, the point of today is, I don't think that Absolutely. Having clearly set criteria, yes, that would be helpful. What I'm talking about is doing that in a broader context of acknowledging that we have to be much more creative about inventory. We have to be much more creative about pushing the envelope on the burden of investing in a private, quote-unquote, private study. The ability to accelerate your process through the Plum Committee and other parts of the city. We do it for other nonprofits. We don't do it for charter schools. That's the city council can lead on that. And so the conversation about criteria becomes it's very related to your first point. It becomes a less contentious conversation when we are simultaneously working together to broaden the inventory. These are all conversations and dialogues that can move forward. I want to thank Sean. I know I talked a lot. I just want to end by saying that the conversation that we're having, and I hope the listening that's going on to the different perspectives, the different stories, is something that's not happened enough. These are rooms that I am willing to be in and want to be in. The stabilizing of the budget presents us a couple of different avenues of change. It could accelerate and punctuate competition in a very divisive way, because after about 7 years, we can actually give folks the tools to compete better. Or it could really kind of acknowledge that on the whole, dynamic choice is not only a value that we embrace, it is generally positive for everybody. And we can look at ways of really moving forward in a much more collective, collaborative, and student-based direction. I've learned a long time ago not to make promises, but it is my intention that you will see that from me. And it doesn't mean that I won't be an advocate for LAUSD schools when I feel that advocacy is needed. Doesn't mean I won't be an advocate for families' choices that they make to remain in the district or their neighborhood or community school. But it certainly means that I have recognized that the ongoing contention and adversarial relationship just hasn't helped kids. And I'm very much looking forward to the opportunity to have more conversations like this.
Sean, in closing, I really believe that transparency needs to remain a fundamental value here, and the more transparency we can bring to issues of resources and sensitivity, the quicker we will get to the desired outcome. Also, Steve mentioned that with our building program, we've done things that people said were impossible, And Prop 39 is similar. When I came to this program, many very experienced, knowledgeable people said, this is impossible. You'll never be able to do this. And we will get there. We have come a long ways. We will get there. The thing that keeps me up at night is just how long is it going to take?
Thank you guys.
Thank you.